Hi. So now for some final thoughts about Land of the Lost. And first, I'm going to talk about the movie, which I did watch, but I didn't take any notes about it. But I'm going to hold the thing because I don't want to be alone in the frame. Although I know I've always got Susan and Michael. So anyway, the movie. It's not very good. But it's very nice to look at. The big budget version of the thing from the 90s that I've been watching that's based on the thing from the 70s. It is the nicest to look at of all of these things, arguably. I mean, there's a lot of charm in the stop motion dinosaurs, and the practical sets. I'll get to it when I talk about the 70s episodes that I watched, but the 90s version seems to have been filmed, if not in an actual jungle, then at least in a big backyard somewhere or a park or something. Um, it looks really nice and natural. Um, but like the dinosaurs, the Pakuni pretty much look the same across the board, 70s, 90s, and 2009. And the what are the lizard ones? The Sleestaks. They too. Well, the Sleestaks in the movie are look more like the Sleestaks from the '70s version, but sleek special effects instead of what look like very cheap Creature from the Black Lagoon Halloween costumes. So they're kind of in the middle because the ones from the '90s with their armor and their weapons and their facial expressions. Well, I'm biased because those are the ones I grew up with, but um, so the movie ones, the movie Sleestaks look like cooler versions of the Sleestaks from the '70s, but the '90s Sleestaks are in their own category. That's how I'll do it. Um, Anything else from the movie? There is, I think, a good movie to be made that kind of mashes up the '90s version and the '70s version, and it's not the 2009 version. It keeps the family dynamic, it keeps the vacation dynamic, and um, it blends the Sleestaks together. The Pakuni can stay pretty much the same because they did stay pretty much the same, and it adds Krista uh, from the '90s version to the '70s version. So I think that there's not just a good movie franchise in there, possibly. Not something like Animorphs or Wishbone, where I'll be the lowest on the totem pole just to be involved, but it would be cool to see. So that's all I'll say about the movie. Now, the '70s version, that '70s show, it was. I ended up only watching the first two episodes because I was scrolling through. There are 43, so I wouldn't do something like this that I've been doing for my favorite '90s shows, where I watch all of them two at a time and then make videos because it's not a looking back for one thing, and for another thing, um, well, as an extension of that, I wouldn't know what I would say because half of this is me saying this is how I felt when I was a kid watching this. Um, but I might watch them at some point, just kind of just straight through or binge them to whatever extent I can, because they looked interesting. The stop motion, the dinosaurs looked different because our understanding of how dinosaurs looked has changed over the years. If it was done today, they would have feathers. Um, Many of them, maybe not all of them, but the stop motion effects, the dinosaurs moved more slowly and differently. In addition to looking different, and the puppets weren't like it was another mix. At least with the T Rex, it was a mix of a puppet for up close and stop motion for the whole body. Um, the puppets didn't look as good as the puppets from the '90s, but the stop motion, uh, given the difference in our understanding of dinosaurs and how they looked and moved, was approximately the same. So there's that, but the rest of the set, not as nice to look at as the '90s version. It looked oftentimes like they were filming in front of a green screen, and then the backdrops were added after they were filmed, and the sets, like whenever there was a big rock or like they were hiding behind a big rock, it was mostly rocks that were the sets that were physically there, or the temple was cool, the Sleestak temple was cool, but they just didn't see, after the 90s version where it actually looks like they're in a lush jungle. Um, it was disappointing set wise, and just as far as the overall feel, there it's kind of in the same way that the 90s version felt like Full House, but they're in dinosaur times. This one very much felt like the Brady Bunch, but in dinosaur times, especially because the little girl, Holly, has not curls like Cindy, the youngest one in curls, but braids, which Cindy, I think, eventually did adopt in the later seasons. Um, but she was very Cindy-ish. The dad, Rick, was very Tom Brady-ish. Is it Tom Brady? Is that the guy? Is that the Brady dad, or is that the football? I know it's the football player's Tom Brady, but was the dad in the Brady Bunch Tom Brady? I don't know, and I'm not going to look it up. But I think that the dad in the Brady Bunch was Tom Brady, but I might be wrong. And then, what was his name? Will, I think? Will? Will, the oldest kid, the son, he was very Greg Brady-ish. And I think maybe a lot of TV characters, especially within family units at that time, were probably cut from the same cloth, but again, in dinosaur time. So, but that's how it felt. It felt like 70s sitcom with dinosaurs, just like Land of the Lost felt like 80s, 90s sitcom with dinosaurs. Yeah, I'm just going to jump around rather than go over what happens in each episode, because a general feel is more what I'm going for here. It had two, like the 90s version has that one great song that you get the version with words at the beginning of the episode and then the instrumental version at the end. This had a very twangy song at the beginning, and then a more Beatles-ish, Simon and Garfunkel-ish theme song at the end. That the one at the end included the words "Living in the Land of the Lost," but sung very differently than the 90s song. But that was just interesting because start the first episode, got the twangy thing. I thought, okay, that's what they're going for. It's another one of those sitcoms. Like, what was it? The one with the Clampetts. I forget the one with the Clampetts. But saying the Clampetts, there was a Weird Al song too. Beverly Hillbillies. That was the one. It's Beverly Hillbillies at the beginning, and then at the end, it's something else. I don't know. And I was a little confused because at the very beginning of the very first episode, they seem to have just arrived and they're still confused and running from dinosaurs, but they also have established their home base at some cave. So I wasn't quite sure where I was in the timeline at the very beginning. Also, because of the way that the theme song, the stuff that happens over the song, it's not edited together scenes from the show. It's them arriving and then running away. And so I thought that was the very beginning of the episode. And so I thought, oh, they really did just arrive. And also, I talked in the other videos about how the porters always seem to have too much stuff for it having been a vacation. And these guys, the marshals, they seemed to just have literally what was on their backs. They had backpacks with, they had a canteen, had a couple of water jugs for like filling up, put it in so that you have a supply of water. But that's not unreasonable. You can carry that in a backpack, especially if it has no water in it. And they have what are they? The sleeping bags. And so which means it also looks like one of those shows where they're going to be wearing the same exact clothes, always perfectly clean, no matter what happens in every single episode. But I only watched 2 episodes, but they wore the same clothes in both. The Bikuni, like I said, pretty much all the way through the Bikuni, 70s, 80s, or 70s, 90s, 2000s, same design, same characters, same idea, which is essentially Chewbacca. But I didn't first think of Chewbacca. I thought of the Ewoks, because the way that Chaka, who is kind of the stink character here, the way that he talks is like he sounds like the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, and this was 10 years before Return of the Jedi and 3 years before the first Star Wars movie. So, and I heard something else about the origins of Chewbacca on a podcast just now, and I forget exactly what I heard, but when I was watching last night, I was thinking, oh, so Chewbacca, so the Pakuni kind of evolved in two directions. They some of them got bigger and became Wookiees, and some of them got smaller and became Ewoks. At least in science fiction literature, that's what happened. Not like they're not all in the same universe. So that's something neat, cute. Also, just there were a couple of ties to the between the movie and the '70s version that I did like, despite not liking the movie very much. And that one of them was Walnut Brain. Holly has a line in the first episode, while his brain is the size of a walnut, and one of the funnier things that happens in the movie is Rick Marshall, Will Ferrell's character, says that about the T-Rex, and then it goes on in the Will Ferrell way of just completely overdoing, explaining how dumb the T-Rex is, and the T-Rex, of course, hears this and isn't that dumb, and starts to do smart things, and then later on, Rick receives at the cave where they're hiding a giant walnut. So like, his brain is the size of a walnut, but this is a walnut here in Land of the Lost. So that I liked. But that's where I saw the movie. Fine, it's a walnut joke. But then I saw the original thing, and it enhanced my appreciation of the movie. So that is possible. The kids, the Marshalls, they rescue Chaka from a T-Rex, and Chaka steals their lighter because it's easier to make fire. All these sorts of things, and that's the first episode. The second episode, we meet the Sleestaks, and we meet them at a temple. And I think the first episode is called Chaka. The second episode is the Sleestak God, and so they're in a Sleestak temple. The Sleestaks capture the two kids, and the two kids are suspended in a net on a platform in a net suspended over a pit. And I guess that's where the Sleestak God is, and I don't know if it's a big Sleestak or if it's a giant monster that the Sleestaks appease. But they are captured and they are suspended. And Chaka has to find them. I wrote down that there's a Triceratops that they call Spike, but in the '90s version, the Stegosaurus is called Spike, and I'm not sure which is more appropriate. I lean toward the Stegosaurus, not just because it's the '90s version, but because the Stegosaurus has a tail with spikes, whereas what the Triceratops has are the three horns on its face, and there are more horns than spikes, and the Stegosaurus also has the plates, but it's not the most important thing in the world. The Beware of Sleestaks is also in the movie, but of course it is because that's what it's about. And what else did Chaka goes to get Rick and help him save the kids. And I wrote down that Chaka's learning English, but his English has an accent that is very suggestive of Japanese stereotypes of the era. Pretty much the biggest thing being L's and R's switching places. Like a word with an L sounds like an R and vice versa. So it was the '70s. It's there. We'll see. I mean, if I watch more episodes, we'll see if that accent goes away. But it is there. Let's see. Didn't write down much more of any interest other than Chaka encourages Rick to use fire in his pursuit of saving his children from the Sleestaks, because the Sleestaks would be afraid of fire. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my experience with the last two, or the first two episodes of the original series. Think if I have any more thoughts, like I said, I think that there is a good movie, indeed a good movie franchise to be made from this property. I don't think it has been worn out. The 70s version had 43 episodes over 3 seasons. The 90s version has 26 episodes over 2 seasons, and um, we are without a good dinosaur franchise at the moment. The Jurassic movies are fine, but it's the same idea over and over again, and this is the same idea in many ways as like the Lost World, not the Lost World Jurassic Park, although yes, the Lost World Jurassic Park, but I'm talking about the Arthur Conan Doyle book and so many others. Even Herland, to an extent, you get a Krista character in there. But this specific incarnation of a family on vacation, they end up in the time of the dinosaurs. There are these violent humanoid lizard creatures, and also the Bakuni, the missing link type characters, and add Krista, have somebody there who's been there, used to be human. The Island of the Blue Dolphins character, the Karana character, have her there too, who she's kind of forgotten herself, but then she meets the humans, starts remembering things. Lots of good stuff could happen. I'll go back on what I said. I'd be a very low level person in order to work on this movie if it ever happens. But I'm not as gung-ho about it as with the other three. Of the 4 shows that I've done this with, the Land of the Lost is the least of the 4, but just as big a swing. It just didn't hit the ball as far as the other 3. And I guess Animorphs it's got the amazing book series, and then the TV show was a little ridiculous in its attempts to capture the book series and live up to it. Space Cases and Wishbone, I think, are not flawless, but pretty close to flawless. And Land of the Lost is it wasn't the 90s version. Talking back again about the 90s version, it was a little not very sure-footed. Did some cool things visually, built on the original, and I wish it well. So yeah, I've got an idea for what I would do if I was going to do this again, but not until late July, because I'm going to actually travel a little bit. Between now and then, things are going to peter out. Still going to be reading, and I've got some one-off video ideas that I'm going to just go with just to keep doing it, because it's something to do. I enjoy it. It's kind of a record in a way that I'm keeping of thoughts, so whether or not anybody watches it is immaterial. So that's what to expect if there's anybody out there expecting anything from me on YouTube. Check out Land of the Lost. You don't have to watch them all. You don't have to watch them in order. Maybe the ones with the cyborg, the Future Boy episode. That was another thing that I was wondering. The reason I only watched the first 2 is because I was skimming through and I was thinking, I should watch the first of this season and the first of this season, but then I should watch the second of that season, because look at that. Oh, and then that episode in the middle there was too much to choose from, so I decided not to choose and to just see how it's set up. But there's a character, Elic or something, Enoch from is in the last episode of the 70s version of the show, and an Enoch character is also in the movie. And knowing that, I was kind of curious there. It looks like in the 3rd episode they have their Tasha character, but their Tasha character is a brontosaur. Becomes the family pet. So I am curious, but there was just too many reasons to watch too many of the episodes for me to pick 2 at random. So that's why I just went with the normal. But it made me wonder, is there a Future Boy? Is there one with a time traveler? Is there a cyborg? I know there are guest stars. It doesn't seem like a Krista character ever appears, but it looks like there might be more recurring humans. I don't know. I'll find out. You can find out. And to keep from rambling further, I'll just say, as Krista would say, for the last time, peace and love.